All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the channel. It is Tuesday, and you know what that means. Time for some Tuesday Tao. Change your thoughts, change your life, living the wisdom of the Tao, ladies and gentlemen. Tuesday Tao. Of course, we are reading from Dr. Wayne W. Dyer's Change Your Thoughts, Change Your Life. And we are trying to apply and live the wisdom of the Tao Te Ching, 2,500-year-old life lessons and mystical and spiritual wisdom that has the ability, if we practice and apply it and research it and study it, to change our lives for the better, ladies and gentlemen. And that's why we are here, seeking to discover a knowledge and a wisdom from the ages that can help us increase the quality of our life through a greater awareness and understanding of the nature of reality itself. And so today, ladies and gentlemen, we will be looking at the 71st verse of the Tao Te Ching, in which Wayne Dyer titles his little essay, little section here about this 71st verse of the Tao Te Ching, Living Without Sickness. Living without sickness, ladies and gentlemen, this could be a powerful one. And this is an area that I spend a lot of time thinking about and feel very passionately about, because it's an area that has to do with a set of beliefs and with a set of understandings and with the way that we view reality from a certain perspective based on what it is that we have been taught and have been told. But if you remember, ladies and gentlemen, becoming autodidactic, becoming self-taught, self-educated, means that you don't necessarily believe everything it is that you've always been told. You begin to ask questions, and more importantly, question the answers. Because when we can do both of those things, we can begin to discover for ourselves deeper levels of knowledge. And so when it comes to sickness and in health, and all of these areas that have to do with our physical, mental, and spiritual, emotional well-being, ladies and gentlemen, it comes down to a set of thoughts, perspectives, and beliefs. And we have to examine the limiting perspectives, thoughts, and beliefs that we have on thinking certain things just aren't possible. Or, oh, that just won't help me. Well, you know, my situation is different from everybody else's, so this isn't going to work for me. I hear this too often, and it's terrible. It's self-defeating attitudes that we've been taught by society over the last 200 years. And if we are, you know, small-minded enough, weak-minded enough to be susceptible to succumb to these limiting beliefs that have to do with our very physical, mental, spiritual, emotional well-being, well, I think we need to take another look at that. So without any more rambling, ladies and gentlemen, let's dive into the 71st verse of the Tao Te Ching. It begins by saying, knowing ignorance is strength. Ignoring knowledge is sickness. Only when we are sick of our sickness shall we cease to be sick. The sage is not sick, but the sage is not sick, but is sick of sickness. This is the secret of health. Mind blower. It's a simple one, ladies and gentlemen. It's only 6 lines, but in these 6 lines reside the ultimate lesson, the ultimate wisdom of the ages, coming to us from Lao-tzu, from, you know, this well-respected text that has many translations that have survived more than 25 centuries, from a teacher of the great way, great spiritual master, is telling us here in this 71st verse of the Tao Te Ching the secret of health and sickness. And it says it in the first 2 lines most poignantly, or incredibly well. Knowing ignorance is strength. ignoring knowledge is sickness. And you could almost translate to that as ignoring knowledge is failure, is ignorance. Ignoring knowledge is ignorance, ladies and gentlemen. So if you want to remain to be ignorant, then that's fine. We won't call you stupid. But those of us that have heard the information and continue to ignore it, well, anyways, we're not going to get into a debate on the difference between ignorance and stupidity. But ladies and gentlemen, you can see here in these lines, knowing ignorance is strength. So knowing that you have been ignoring certain information and certain philosophies and ideologies that have the ability to change your life for the better, knowing that is strength, and it gives you the strength to begin looking into. Like he says, only when we are sick of our sickness shall we cease to be sick, because of what I would call this searching, this becoming your own master, becoming your own guru, and mastering your own physical, spiritual, mental, emotional, all the capacities of reality that we experience here, and becoming, mastering all of those versions of yourself to your own ascension, whether that be a physical or a spiritual. And so simply what I'm saying there is you must, when it comes to this idea of sickness and health, you must begin to open your mind in an entirely new way to what it is that you thought was previously possible. And then whatever it is that ails you, begin to research new thoughts and new ideas around those topics. Because just in the past 10 years, the understanding of our ability to heal ourselves, reduce aging, cure things that were previously thought incurable, with case study upon case study and example upon example, with new supplements and new ways of thinking and using electromagnetic therapies and, vibrational light therapy. There is 1,000 new ways for us to begin thinking about our physical, spiritual, emotional, mental well-being, ladies and gentlemen. So if you hadn't considered that, then let's just start there. I'm already like, all right, what am I going to title this video? The spiritual secret to living without sickness. Maybe that could be it. So simply, knowing ignorance gives you strength, or is strength, as the first line of the 71st verse of the TaoTe Ching says. Ignoring knowledge, ignoring the information that could have an impact to change your well-being of any status, is sickness. You cannot ignore the knowledge, and the longer you do, the longer you will continue to deal with what it is you're dealing with. And if that's working for you, then that is perfectly fine. But if it's not working for you, then I suggest you start trying something different. So only when we are sick of our sickness shall we cease to be sick. I think this describes a searching and a journey we go on to discover what it is we need to help ourselves, because our bodies are the ultimate, have the ultimate capacity. We just have to help it to do so, rather than trying to say, oh, I got a bad shoulder, so I'm going to take something to cover up the symptoms of my bad shoulder, but that will give me 6 other problems that I have to deal with. Is it really worth it, ladies and gentlemen? This is a question to ask ourselves when it comes to the use of pharmaceutical medicines. I don't even know if I'd call them medicines. Pharmaceutical intoxicants that, to fix one thing, to cover up the symptom of one thing, not fixing. We're not going to the solution of the problem and trying to treat it in a natural way so that the body can get back in a balance and a homeostasis. No, we're just going to slam it with whatever it needs so you don't feel it anymore until you're dealing with 1,700 other side effects and living with sickness. This chapter, titled by Wayne Dyer, is Living Without Sickness. And so the sage is not sick because what is sick of sickness, and this is the secret of health. So what does this mean? I mean, so for so many people suffering with sickness and ailments and, you know, whatever it be for you, whether it's a mental or a spiritual imbalance, or, I like to call struggles and difficulties opportunities, because it's really what they are, ladies and gentlemen. It's an opportunity for us to begin to apply our own wisdom. Nowadays, with an infinite amount of knowledge at your fingertips for most of us, there is no excuse for ignorance anymore, other than laziness. And that in itself is its own problem, which we all deal with. I'm lazy too, ladies and gentlemen. So I'm not sitting on a high horse saying I'm better. I deal with all of this just as much. This is why I'm trying to drill this into my mind, as well as those of you who are joining me here on this journey to seek to achieve and maintain happiness through enlightenment, through greater awareness and understanding of reality, so that we can increase the quality of our experience. Doesn't it sound greater? Don't you want to feel greater? Living without sickness. All right, Wayne Dyer, what do you have to say? Well, he begins by saying, quote, there's quite a paradox present in this passage, in this 71st verse of the TaoTe Ching, ladies and gentlemen, which has been expressed, Wayne continues, throughout my many readings of the TaoTe Ching as variations on only when your sickness becomes sick will your sickness disappear. I mean, I'm not saying all of this philosophy and this wisdom and this knowledge is easily understood, but it is very powerful and transformational, ladies and gentlemen. So when we hear a sentence like that, let's not say to ourselves, oh, this is hogwash or whatever. Let's actually consider it and say, maybe there's something to this. Because that's one of our problems with discovering true knowledge, I think, nowadays, is we're very dismissive, and we think, well, if I can't understand it in 10 seconds, then it can't be real. And that really frustrates me. That's an area where I need to practice more observance, because there's so many people that are like, you try to tell them something life-changing and say, look into this. And they say, well, every video I seen was 58 minutes. And you're like, yeah, that's just the beginning. And they're like, well, I don't have enough time. And I'm like, you don't have enough time to want to change your entire life? Beep. You don't have time? Like, it's literally the quality of your experience of life is not very important to you. So you want to go around suffering because you didn't have 1 hour to begin researching whatever it is that you need to understand to take the steps to change your life? It stuns me, ladies and gentlemen. You see this out there when people come across new topics and they say, oh, this is silly. There's nothing to this. This guy's a conspiracy theorist and he's just making stuff up because I can't understand it in 5 minutes, and there's no 5-minute videos for me to get the gist of what is being talked about here. When really, to truly understand something, it's a lifetime journey. Anyways, you can tell, ladies and gentlemen, that this is a subject that I am passionate about. So let's go back now with that understanding that we have to at least be willing to spend time in constant contemplation, like Hermes and Thoth said in the Hermetica. And if you could see, ladies and gentlemen, I got my bookshelf behind us now. So when I say that you can get this for yourself to put on your shelf, I now have a reference. With that being said, there is a link in the description below this video if you'd like to get this book for yourself to put it on your shelf and read along and join us for the last little bit of this journey that we have. And you can go back and join us for the rest of the journey that we have had so far. It's been fantastic. And thank you for those of you that have joined me so far. I love and appreciate all of you. And so, only when your sickness becomes sick will your sickness disappear. What does this mean to you? Well, what this means to me is when you're able to get your body into a state of wellness, of proper nutrition, of, proper chemical balance, all of the different things that are their own subjects. And once again, we must become our own masters, our own spiritual gurus, our own scientists, our own doctors. We must become all of that. Our own philosophers, our own counselors, our own astrologers. We must become all of this for ourselves in this new age of infinite knowledge. This is why constant contemplation and daily work and thought and research. I'm not saying like there is time for rest, which is also part of the process, to keep this balance and harmony and alignment. Now, so when our sickness becomes sick, my mind's saying when it is in a place where the terrain no longer allows it to do what it is or thrive in the way that it is thriving, then the sickness will begin to disappear because it cannot be there, because the terrain in which it is existing in does not allow for its existence. Lao-tzu seems to be saying that one must actually become ill in order to avoid illness. A paradox. So, Lao-tzu and Dr. Wayne Dyer and Chase, what are you guys talking about here? Well, Wayne continues. Once again, I've thought long and hard about this short verse. I've played with these words over and over in order to grasp their essential meaning for us and for myself as well. Finally, I've meditated with Lao-tzu's image before me, asking what he meant by this puzzling 71st verse. His answer is what I based the rest of this chapter on. So, ladies and gentlemen, I forgot to say, I hope everybody is doing well. Hope it's a beautiful day where you are. And I hope you got yourself a nice beverage, whether it's a cold beverage or some hot tea. I like hot tea even when it's warm out. I mean, maybe while I'm inside. So the tea today, ladies and gentlemen, says, your breath fills you with energy anywhere and anytime you need it. All right, let us continue. If you're getting value, consider subscribing. And if you are subscribed, then thank you so much. Leave me a comment or send me an email, and maybe you'll get a free landscape painting like you see the one behind me there. So this idea of living without sickness and this paradox that you must actually become ill in order to avoid illness. And so what does this mean? First of all, Wayne says, what does the word sickness imply? Now, this is an important study. What does this word that we're all so take for granted, so used to hearing, and think we know exactly what everything means, when really just a common word study of day-to-day words that we always use can really change our understanding and our awareness of reality. But with that being said, what does this word sickness imply? Sickness, ladies and gentlemen. For me, Wayne says, it means that something in the body or mind is out of balance with the well-being from which it originated. And that's not what everybody believes. Most people think that something has attacked them and they're having trouble fighting this attacking enemy. So, but then there's another way to think about it, like Wayne Dyer describes here. It means that something in the body or mind is out of balance with the well-being or the homeostasis or the base level from where it should be, from which it originated. That is, it's not in agreement with the Tao, with nature, harmony, source, in alignment with the force, ladies and gentlemen. Conditions such as fevers, aches, wheezing, sniffling, breathlessness, coughing, unusual fatigue, and fainting are indications of the presence of illness, and the equivalent of such symptoms in our thinking could be fear, anxiety, anger, hatred, worry, guilt, stress, impatience, and so on. These are signals that our thoughts are out of balance. So, I mean, that's incredible. If you get nothing else, if you don't go any further in this video, that's the ultimate lesson here, is that balance is the key, whether it be physical, mental, or spiritual. Mind, body, spirit, ladies and gentlemen. And so to get these things back in balance, there are things that we need to do. So back to the thoughts, the anxiety, the guilt, the stress, the impatience, the fear. These are all signals that our thoughts are out of balance with our source. Remember, we've talked a lot about source, force, Tao, God in the previous 300 pages, ladies and gentlemen. Dang, high five. We've been making progress. In the previous 333 pages, we have talked a lot about the source and how we are connected to that and can use that and align to it to change our life. And now it's coming into this idea of this unalignment or imbalance of body and mind. So when our thoughts are out of balance with source, Wayne continues, which is pure love, kindness, patience, contentment, and all the other expressions of Tao-centeredness, source alignment, God connectedness that we have discussed in this entire series. So if you've missed a lot of it, please go back and find whatever it is you need. I think we can trust that the force will guide you there. But these things are signals that we are out of balance with this pure love, this kindness, and this patience, and this contentment, and all the other expressions of Tao-centeredness or alignment that appear in the 81 essays of the Tao Te Ching, of this journey that we've been going through. So Wayne Dyer continues, the sage in this verse has looked long and hard at illness and has come to realize that it represents a physical manifestation of misalignment, unbalance, imbalance, or what can be described here as non-Tao thinking. A fever, a cold, an ache, or a pain are all identical to the non-Tao expressions of impatience, fear, anger, or any other ego-driven impulse. So this is where we're connecting the mind to the body and how the mind affects the body. And it's unfortunately, a situation that not many people have even heard about or think is possible or real. You'll tell somebody you can heal yourself with your thoughts, and they'll think you're crazy. And you can laugh at those people and say, well, we'll see in the end. But the science is out there for those of you that think someone is crazy that says you can heal yourself with your thoughts. There is thousands of case studies. I have multiple books here, Becoming Supernatural by Dr. Joe Dispenza, You the Healer by Jose Silva, Eat to Beat Disease by William W. Lee, MD, all full of hundreds and hundreds of pages of case studies on how this is possible, whether you can heal yourself by eating, whether you can heal yourself by thinking. Like I was rambling on about in the beginning, it comes down to knowing ignorance is strength and ignoring knowledge is your failure or your sickness. Now, This doesn't mean that life doesn't give us natural challenges to deal with. That is part of our journey. Wayne Dyer continues. Since the sage has been and seen where thoughts like these lead, he refuses to participate in such folly. Thoughts such as impatience, fear, anger, and all of the ego-driven impulses that we experience here in our lives, ladies and gentlemen, which is very normal. So don't take this like, oh, you're abnormal if you're experiencing ego impulse. No. We all deal with this. And that's why it's a journey we should all be on together, except not many people are talking about this. At least nowadays, there's an exponential amount more than there used to be. So hopefully that continues growing. And like Madame Blavatsky said, there will be a spiritual revolution that is beyond any other kind of revolution that has ever taken place before. And I believe we are in that revolution. But this idea that the sage will think differently, having a greater awareness about how our thoughts and our feelings affect our condition. So, thus, since the sage has seen where thoughts like these lead, he refuses to participate in such folly. And that is the ultimate challenge. And kind of the purpose behind us changing our thoughts is because it will also keep us in a better physical condition. We all know people who live in constant stress struggle physically much more than those of us who live in a state of peace. For the most part. Remember, constant peace would also be an imbalance. So there is a balance. Thus, he has looked at poor health and vowed this. The sage, or those of us who are ready to get there and be there and attempt to be on this journey of the sage in alignment with Source and Tao and God and harmony and well-being, creating well-being for ourselves, will vow, quote, I will not think in ways that bring that about. This ill thinking, you could call it. Non-Tao centered ways. Negative, simply put. I will not think in ways that bring that about. I'll stay centered in the natural well-being of the Tao, because to think a sick thought is to allow sickness to crop up. Now, it's very weird when you try this for yourself. If you really have worked on the principles of manifesting, which that can be a 50,000 year cycle, but you start to see your ability to not, you'll get a little sniffle. And instead of ever thinking, uh-oh, I'm getting a sniffle now, and it's only Monday, by Tuesday, I'm going to have a cough. And by Wednesday, I'm going to have a sore throat, and I'm going to have to call in on Thursday. See what happens, ladies and gentlemen? We just start extrapolating and creating realities with our intentions and our thoughts and our beliefs and our emotions and all of these things that go back to other mystical principles about manifesting and creating your reality through your connection to Source. Whether you like it or not, you're doing it all the time. Most of us are doing it unconsciously, which is why I'm talking about living consciously on purpose, which is a practice. It's not that easy, but we're here. So we'll stay centered in the natural well-being of the Tao, because to think a sick thought is to allow sickness to crop up. So when I get a sniffle, I'm not already planning on, I have to call in on Thursday. I'm going to be real messed up. First thing I think is, I get a sniffle every morning. It goes away in 1 hour. And then it does. And you're like, whoa. And then you're like, man, what was the last time I was sick? I don't really remember, because every time I get a symptom, I think, no, it'll be gone immediately. There were some days I had I was getting, was feeling real rough, sore throat and exhausted, all the bad symptoms of a flu or a bug or whatever it be, ladies and gentlemen. But you think, no, I will be fine. And you firmly believe that. You have zero doubts. That's one of the secrets of manifesting. You cannot doubt. If you doubt, then you will go without your ability to create the reality that you want. So you have no doubt and you say, no, I will be just fine. And then you go about doing the things that you need to do to make yourself just fine. You drink tons of water. You eat all the great foods that you can possibly find, full of the nutrients that you need for what it is that you're trying to deal with. And that takes its own knowledge of nutrition and biochemistry and all of these things. Once again, that's at our fingertips. So if we want to research any of this and get the knowledge for ourselves so that we can make informed decisions. This is why I've been taking C60 Purple Power for 4 years, maybe even 6 years now, ladies and gentlemen, because it is the most powerful antioxidant known to man. And the inflammatory process is the cause for most of our struggles physically. So if you can reduce inflammation all the time, can you imagine the impact positively that's going to have over a 5, 10, 15, 20, 35, 40-year time span? I mean, I don't know. It's exponential. But, ladies and gentlemen, with all that being said, we stay centered in the natural well-being of the Tao, because to think a sick thought is to allow sickness to crop up. Consequently, he's sick of sickness, and the result is the secret of perfect health. Once again, disclaimer, I'm not saying that we don't all deal with opportunities in life. It is very normal for us to deal with opportunities. Even the teacher, Wayne Dyer, of this had his own health struggles, but it was the way that he thought about it. He changed his thoughts and he changed his experience of life. And you can see that if you watch some of his later talks. There's a Wanderlust speech that he gave at a conference. I think it was one of the last speeches he gave before he passed, ascended, hopefully, but it gives us an example. Now, I'm going to stop rambling and try to get to this last page here, ladies and gentlemen, so we can get to do the Tao now. How do we apply this philosophy into our lives? And once again, if you're getting value, consider subscribing. This isn't my normal topic. I don't like to talk about this because this is easily something that many people can disagree about, and that's fine. You can think whatever you want. I'm just here putting down some information so hopefully some of us can pick it up. With that being said, Wayne says, quote, "Allow me to provide you with an example of this, what we've been talking about. My colleague and friend, Radhika Kinger, Ridhika, Radhika, was recently returned from a visit to Puttaparthi, India. Forgive me if I said that wrong. We'll just say she returned from a visit to India, where she was in the presence of Satya Sai Baba. Wow, that name I've heard. This is a God-realized master who lives and breathes all of the divine messages presented presented in the TaoTe Ching, ladies and gentlemen. Satya Sai Baba. Look him up if you ever get a chance. Here is an excerpt from the letter she sent me after this visit. She says, quote, "I just returned from Puttaparthi. After spending a week there in Sai Baba's divine presence, I was saddened to see Sai Baba in a wheelchair due to multiple fractures in his hip bone. According to the doctors, no normal human body can survive such physical agony. But Sai Baba however, remains ever so blissful and completely unaffected by his physical condition. I'm going to stop there. This is what we're talking about, this philosophy, this change your thoughts, change your life. Sai Baba is in a wheelchair, and he does have multiple fractures in his hip bone. But at the very same time, Sai Baba remains ever so blissful and completely unaffected by his physical condition. So that doesn't mean that he's not in a wheelchair and he doesn't still have these things going on. It means that he is blissful and he has transcended it in thought. This is a new place, a new understanding that we can get to. I don't know about in this lifetime, but we better start practicing now, ladies and gentlemen. A devotee, the letter continues, asked Sai Baba, how is it that a God-realized being has to undergo physical suffering? Why doesn't he simply cure himself? You know, this is what I imagine people are thinking when I'm talking about these kind of subjects, like, oh, you can heal yourself with your mind and your thoughts will affect your, all of this stuff. I think people are thinking this, like, but why is it then that you just don't cure yourself and then you're perfect? Because that is not in alignment with the universe and the way that nature and natural law and the universal laws work. So you don't just magically heal yourself, ladies and gentlemen. There is a knowledge and alignment and a process that goes into all of this so that you can have multiple fractures and be in a wheelchair, but remain blissful and completely unaffected by your physical condition at the same time. This is all paradoxes. And so I'm so glad this letter was in here. A devotee asked Sai Baba, how is it that you, such a great spiritual God-realized master and guru, has to undergo this physical suffering? Why don't you just cure yourself? And this is the kind of questions that the sage would smile and find amusement in. So to this, Sai Baba replied, quote, my life is my message. People today need to learn to give up body attachment and experience their divinity that is within. Pain is a natural phenomenon, but suffering is a choice. Sai Baba says, I do not suffer, as I am not the body. Round of applause to that, ladies and gentlemen. That is one of the ultimate lessons by a great spiritual master, Satya Sai Baba. Wow. So we'll read that one more time. He says, my life, why then, a student asks the master, if you are this great spiritual teacher and God divine, God realized divine guru, do you have to undergo physical suffering? Why don't you just heal yourself? Young mind, young student, young Padawan, you have much to learn. He says, my life is my message. People today need to learn to give up body attachment and experience their divinity within. You can imagine the student going, all his thoughts, like, what does that mean? What is Sai Baba saying to me? Sai Baba continues, pain is a very natural phenomenon. You need not worry about this, because suffering is a choice. And so understanding and knowing that we have a choice. We may not have a choice about natural phenomenon in the experience of our journey in our lives, but we do have a choice about how we are going to respond and react to that. Respond with ability, ladies and gentlemen, rather than reacting with disability or reacting out of, I don't know, it's the difference between a reaction and a response. And so we must respond with ability and have a responsibility to these things. Not a responsibility like, oh, I have to take all this weight on my shoulders and I'm responsible for all this. And no. Talking about creating an ability through an awareness and an understanding to respond. A response ability. So whenever something crops up and throws a wrench in our path or whatever, like Sai Baba with a hip fracture and being in a wheelchair, we can remain through an ability to respond ever so blissful and as unaffected as we can be by whatever it is, whatever opportunities that we are thrown. Because pain, as Sai Baba said, is a natural phenomenon, and that is a very normal experience of our lives. However, suffering is a choice. So you choose, ladies and gentlemen, how you want to feel about what it is that you are experiencing and the opportunities that you have and have had throughout your life. And you can think back and compare if you would have thought differently, if you would have changed your thoughts and changed your life, then we would be, ladies and gentlemen, living the wisdom of the Tao. Sai Baba, Wayne continues, well, he said, I do not suffer as I am not the body. And I'll add, we are spiritual beings having a human experience, not the other way around. So Wayne continues, Sai Baba looked at his condition and declared himself to be sick of such a thing being in his life. Suffering with illness just isn't an option when one lives in harmony, in alignment with force, with Tao, with spirit, with God. That which we are a part of and not separate from. Wayne continues, with years of addictive behavior behind me, I can tell you that the wisdom of this verse of the TaoTe Ching was largely responsible for my getting back to the purity and well-being from which I originated. It's a challenge to me, ladies and gentlemen. I became sick of my sickness, whether it was a choice to continue consuming alcohol or anything, ladies and gentlemen. There's a million imbalances in our lives. This is why in the beginning I was saying physical, mental, spiritual, emotional, all of the aspects of our reality and our experience. So this isn't just talking about, physical sickness and illness, but so with addictive behaviors of his past, Wayne Dyer says, I can tell you that the wisdom of this verse is largely responsible for his ability to get back to well-being and homeostasis, the purity from which it is we originate. I became sick of my sickness, he says, and I was no longer willing to go through the withdrawals and shame that accompanied it. I saw my affliction, not so much in the material world anymore, but in the invisible world of my thoughts. Remember everything we've learned about thoughts on this channel, which kept leading me back, he says, to the illness that I was experiencing, whether that be mental, physical, spiritual, emotional. He says, when I finally changed the way I looked at all of this, I was able to bring about the seeming paradox of no longer being ill by getting to the point of being sick of it. And this is truly the secret to health. And so now, ladies and gentlemen, here is Lao-tzu. Here's Lao-tzu coming through Wayne Dyer and then through me on how he would instruct you to put this wisdom, this most powerful wisdom and life-changing wisdom of the 71st verse of the Tao Te Ching to work for you here and now. Number 1, take notes if you need to. Have a happy mind. So number 1 on how we can change our thoughts and change our lives, on how to begin living without sickness, we have to have a happy mind. An ancient Chinese proverb says that if a man has a happy mind, he will have a happy body. A happy mind is sick of sickness. It refuses to anticipate that things will ever get worse. That's the most important part there. You refuse to ever anticipate anything negative again. It doesn't mean that you're not tying up your horses so that when you come out of the tent, all your horses have run away. We still have to be smart and take precautions in life and things, have an awareness. But once again, we refuse to anticipate that things will get worse. It sees a sniffle, a stomach ache, a back or a knee discomfort, and fatigue as messages to follow the body's signals back to a natural state of well-being. A happy mind thinks of the body as capable of healing itself and its infirmities because it knows that it isn't a human creation, but a product of the Tao, of God, of Source, of Spirit. A happy mind trusts in the capacity of the body to live without sickness or suffering. So use your happy mind, ladies and gentlemen, to work with you as a tool to help you stay in harmony and well-being. Wayne says to stay healthy. Number 2, ladies and gentlemen, begin to examine your habits. I understand this is a tough question for all of us, so, we're all on our own journey and we're here at different stages of path. But let's examine our habits. What daily habits distance us from our natural state of well-being? Any addictions, no matter how serious or minor they might seem, are beckoning you to be totally fed up with them. So get sick of being weakened by the destructive pursuits. You know what they are, and you know when you're habitually let yourself become ill from food, alcohol, or drugs, or from the guilt and shame. Sometimes that is more powerful than any physical thing. I think the non-physical things like spiritual, the mental, have a much greater impact on our physical well-being than we have ever come to realize before. So, from the guilt and the shame that results after a binge, remember that ignoring knowledge is sickness. And examine your fixations, vowing no longer to ignore your awareness of what they are. And finally, ladies and gentlemen, a way that we can try to apply practically to put this wisdom into action, into our lives today, which is the reason you should get this book for yourself, to put it on your shelf, is Wayne Dyer gives us at the end of each one of these wonderful lessons and teachings of the Tao Te Ching what he calls do the Tao now. It's a way that we can practically apply this wisdom into our lives today. So, ladies and gentlemen, do the Tao now. Dedicate a day, Wayne says, to really listening and trusting the messages from your body. And then listen to what your mind tells you about those signals. Introduce your mind to the possibility that the body is signaling a request that you can grant, such as a nap or a walk along the beach, for instance. Cultivate the Tao-centered, happy mind, which will not entertain sickness thoughts, which will no longer entertain these thoughts that have allowed us to live with sickness And when we can do this and create this ability, we will begin creating the ability for ourselves to live without sickness. As the 71st verse of the Tao Ching teaches. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is a boom to knowledge, and a boom to wisdom, and a boom to the wisdom of the Tao. Change Your Thoughts, Change Your Life by Dr. Wayne W. Dyer. And the crowd goes wild. That was incredible, ladies and gentlemen. That was mind-blowing. That's a deep one, and I know we all have a lot to learn about these subjects, and that's one that you could really spend a long time contemplating. I mean, it's one of the subjects that I like to research, ladies and gentlemen, whether it be philosophy or psychology or spirituality and mysticism or health and well-being or the lost secrets of history. All of these subjects, ladies and gentlemen, I think are keys to our seeking to achieve and maintain happiness through enlightenment, seeking to create a greater awareness and understanding of our reality so that we can increase the quality of our experience. And remember, ladies and gentlemen, seek to discover the wisdom of the ages and the mysteries of our history. And remember that there is no way to happiness because happiness is the way. So when we can begin to bring happiness to life, all the goals that we've been telling ourselves, oh, I'll be happy when I get there, but I can't be now, that becomes irrelevant because we are there now. And then the entire journey is hopefully wonderful, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much. I love and appreciate all of you spending time here with me and Dr. Wayne Dyer and Lao-tzu and all the wonderful authors and poets of the wisdom of the ages and the lost wisdom of the pharaohs. We will be diving deeper into that tomorrow, ladies and gentlemen. And we are on the section entitled The Gods, in which this chapter, Hermes discusses the many powers through which God administers his creation. And I believe, ladies and gentlemen, we are talking about, although the constellations of the stars contain the destiny of everything, the 5 visible planets and the sun and the moon are forces which administer destiny. Astrology, ladies and gentlemen, and astrotheology. Coming tomorrow in the lost wisdom of the pharaohs and the Hermetica on Wednesday wisdom, ladies and gentlemen, which we do every Wednesday. And so with that being said, I don't know if I can get that to stand up again. There we go. With that being said, ladies and gentlemen, I love and appreciate all of you. Be sure to expand the description below the video. Hit more if you have to and hit it again. Oh yeah, also be sure to hit the bell so that you'll get all notifications for when I post videos. Sometimes, people don't get the notifications or YouTube doesn't want people to get the notifications. And so be sure to hit the bell next to the subscribe button. And subscribe if you haven't already, especially if you made it this far on the video. I'd love to hear from you in the premiere, which I always do with these videos. I record them like this and then premiere them about an hour later at 3 p.m. Usually it's about 2 o'clock now, which is doing our normal process, ladies and gentlemen. My hair's been a little wild today, but that is fine. And also in the description below, you can find a link to the book to get it for yourself, to put it on your shelf, as well as a link to the audio book if you want to hear Dr. Wayne Dyer read this whole book for you in his own words, which is fantastic. He's got a voice. And also a link to my landscape paintings in my Etsy shop, as well as the bottles right there on the table. C60 Purple Power, ladies and gentlemen, the most powerful antioxidant known to man, discovered by Buckminster Fuller. Buckminster Fullerenes. Carbon 60. All right. That being said, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to send you all thoughts of health and well-being and harmony and connection to source or force or Tao. And remember, be the change that you want to see in the world. Be the example that we want to set for others to see. Love you, ladies and gentlemen. I'll see you tomorrow on Wednesday Wisdom.